So dear.
Okay, so with that, introduce Fabrice. Here we go. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. So the presentation is based on what I did 3 times, 2 times for developer group, and 1 time in the World Tour at the World Tour of Paris, but it was a shorter one. So I reused the same font of the slide, but not the content is really the one I gave during the developer group. So it's a 1 hour session around. So for ID to have an idea how long it will be. So yeah. So regarding myself, I'm a technical architect and also a senior developer. And my team call me the stuntman because I'm really used to do crazy things on Salesforce. I'm afraid of nothing. Whatever is working for me is fine. And my clients like this, even if it's a bit scary sometimes, it's working. And today we'll have a special guest. So you all can recognize Gizmo from Gremlins. So he will be a bit shy. So you may see his bad friends a lot. When you see them, it's just a way to say there is a trick. So be careful when you are working on this subject with Apex Log. So that's why it will be my friend for the session. So the session is divided in 2 parts. First part is pure theory. So I will try to add some information regarding what you should know. So beginning is really things that you should know. Then I will go in depth in what most of the people are not aware regarding debug logs. And so second part will be a display of free tools that you can use. If you want to read logs in a simple manner and if you don't want to do it yourself, there is tools that are able to do it. So I will try to show you them. And Apex Repair Debugger is not part of the demo because there is a lot of documentation on it. So if you never use it, I really strongly suggest you to use it, but I will not show it during the presentation. Okay. So first thing you have to know when you work with debug log is you need to understand the concept of trace flag. So trace flag is just a way to say I want to monitor some user within my org, but there is some catch. So the first one you have really to be careful is that when you are using a lot of trace flag, which is my case, I'm used to have sometimes up to 200-300 of trace flag at the same time. Salesforce will always order the trace flag if you go inside the debug log screen in the setup by the name of the user instead of sorting by the expiration date, which should be the one we should have by default. So just be careful regarding this. Normally, you should sort the date and not on this if you want to see the last one that are still active. And it's very important because you can have only one trace flag active for each user. So that's why you need to check that there is not a trace flag that is already activated for the user, or Salesforce will not let you create a new one for the specified user. Last thing is if you plan to use the developer console, it will be one of the tools I will present later on and with features that are not known by developers. Just be careful that if you use it, the log level of the developer console will be always overlapping whatever trace flag you have put before, because the last trace flag created is the one that is taking the lead on what debug level will be used. So really be careful if you use the developer console. It may override what you were expecting to do. Okay. And the good news is you can use the tooling API if you want to create trace flags. So if you have to create like 100, 200 trace flags at the same time, don't do it through the console. You can use tooling API to do it. It's not that easy, not very difficult to do. And if you really need some, I could provide some example later on. Okay. Quickly, a trace flag, how it's divided. So the first thing will be the who. So here you can choose who you want to trace. So the who will be explained a little bit just after. The how long is how long you want to monitor the user. So maximum 24 hours. And the what will be explained again later on is what you want to see. Okay. So regarding the who is dividing by most of the time what you will be interested is tracking user or tracking some specific user from the platform, like platform integration, automated process. So these are the user that most of the time we want to track. But another option that many developers never use or don't understand is the ability we have to specify Apex class or Apex trigger during monitoring. So if you want to use this, you first need to have a trace flag activated for the user you want to monitor. Most of the time, you will say the user is monitored with a very low level of information. And then you can say, I want to monitor this specific class or this specific trigger, and this is the one that you will push regarding the level.
Oh.
So within the log, you will just have information on the class or the trigger. But if you don't have at least one trigger on the user active, those ones are useless because they do nothing. Okay? So just be careful if you plan to use them. And the debug level, so I won't read the slides. Here I'm just summarizing very quickly what are the different topics that you can address through debug level. And what is interesting me is what you will find in every level is the code unit. So code unit is the keyword for Salesforce to say, I'm describing here what element is starting the log, okay? So whenever Salesforce will generate an Apex log, you will have a code unit. 99% of the time you have a code unit, and the code unit will tell you your log has been started because of, and it will tell you what, and it can be Apex, it can be batch, it can be flow, it can be whatever that is triggering your Apex log. Okay, so it's really the key point you have to know if you are working with logs is that the code unit will contain the information you want to see at the beginning. And after, what is important is understanding what capabilities you can switch with debug level. So most of the developers don't really know what is the difference between the levels, so I try to explain them very quickly. So the idea of the Apex is fine. If it's in blue, it's what I recommend. So if you don't know what to put Apex in fine. Fine will be enough. If you go for finer, Salesforce will add heap information regarding what Apex is doing. And if you go for finest, you will have all the variables that are scoped during the transaction display within the log. And this is a big issue for me because it can sometimes expose some confidential info. So clearly, finest is really something I will never use, except if I want to read a log with the Apex Replay Debugger. Apex Replay Debugger is the only tool I know that is really able to use this level of information. If you are not planning to use it, stay at the level of fine. You will have more than you need regarding the information. For the workflow means also process builder and flow. So be careful, workflow is not only workflow rule or process builder, it's also for flow. I strongly suggest you to go to fine. If you set the fine level, it will be like Apex. You will have access to all the flow elements that your flow is using, but you don't have the detail of the elements. If you want to detail, go for finer. A finer will work a bit like finers regarding Apex. Okay, but my suggestion is keep fine, and fine for Apex and workflow. It will be more than enough most of the time. Regarding database, if you go for the info level, you will have access to all information that humans are normally interested in. So so-called social DML operation, you will have them.
4 hours. 5 hours.
Why last night I slept at 10?
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay, then what you have after is fine and finest. If you want more information, to be honest, I never use fine or finest as it's most of the time useless for me, but just keep in mind that if you need them, know why you're using them, okay? Apex profiling is also considered to be useless, so keep it at none. The one case I need it is when I need to work on so-called 101 issues, because it's the only way you will be able to monitor if a query is belonging to a managed package or not to a managed package. I will explain this a little bit more later on. Okay. And the last one, system, is the thing I will never apply because I never know when I need it, and I never find a way it can be useful for me. And if you plan to use the developer console, never activate the system level. It can crash the way the developer console is working. So I try to avoid using it most of the time. Okay. It can be useful, but I really try not to use it. Okay. Let's continue. Then if you need to find your logs, what you need is, again, you need to use this query. So if you just execute this query, Salesforce will provide you all the information you need regarding your logs. So it will give you the operation that is useless. Very hard to read, but that's what Salesforce will provide you. It will provide you the name of the user that is logged. You have access to the duration of the log. So I will explain why it's important to have this information. And very important, you will have the start time and the end time. I forget to add the end time within my query, I should, because it's also something you will need during the presentation. Okay. So a lot of information that you have are directly accessible through the Apex log object. Okay. And one scary thing with the Apex log is the status, because the status of the log will always be in the language of the user you are tracking. Okay, so whatever is your own language, the status will be always retrieved with the local of the user that is been executing the query or the Apex transaction, which means that if you are working in multi-language orgs, be careful that you need to be able to read more than one type of status. You need to be able to read it in French, in English, in German, whatever. So, okay, so just be careful regarding this. Now, let's see the limit of the log storage, because log storage is really something that was amazing for me, because in my mind, I was limited to 1 GB of storage when I was logging, and I just realized it was not that simple. So first thing is, when you're creating some logs in Salesforce, the maximum size of the log will always be 20 megabytes. You cannot go above 20 megabytes. And the bad news is Salesforce will always remove the system debug first from your log, but he will not remove them, all of them, if he hasn't to. Meaning that if by removing half of the system debug, the size of the log is smaller than expected, he will keep half of the system debug, which means that sometimes you are expecting to see a specific system debug, you won't see it. It's not because you didn't reach it, it's because the size of the log is hiding the system debug. So really be careful when you have log going to the size of 20 megabytes, you should reduce the debug level in order to keep your log smaller than 20 megabytes. Okay. Second thing that is clearly explained by Salesforce is that the log will be stored 7 days, and after that, Salesforce will destroy them. And if you read the documentation, what Salesforce is telling is that if you have more than 1 GB of log, you cannot create trash flag anymore, you cannot modify them, but you can keep using the existing trash flag, okay? And the rule is, if you have a trash flag that is exceeding 1 GB of data in less than 15 minutes, the trash flag will be deactivated. If not, it will continue to monitor what's happening. And the result is sometimes in my org, I was able to have like 16 GB of log because the trash flag was still monitoring what I asked him to do. And the generation was always smaller than 1 GB every 15 minutes, which was perfect. Okay, so don't keep in mind that the limits of the log is 1 GB. It's really 1 GB per 15 minutes and per trash flag, which means that you can really have huge information inside the log. The main issue you will have with them is retrieve them in order to exploit the information later. Okay, so don't try to go to the maximum of log. Starting from 1 GB, it's good to have tools that will retrieve them and start to parse the log if you really want to see what's happening. Here, I'm just showing quickly an example of what I will show after. So here we just have a small log, and what we can see is that what we have done is creating a few records, executing a few queries, so almost nothing regarding the execution. And the result was this. If I put the debug level at the what I consider to be the right level, you will have around 20K of data inside the log. If you push all the system debug level to the maximum, you will have around 62K, which means that if you don't know what to put, try to remain to some what I call the best debug level information. So your log should be really smaller than what you will have if you put everything to the maximum. Okay, so just keep in mind, if you push a debug level to its maximum, just do it on purpose and not because you don't know if you need it or not. Okay, you should know why you are using Apex profiling to find us. If you don't know why you're using it, it, keep it to none. Same for the Apex. If you don't know why you need it to be finest, keep it at fine. It will be more than enough. Okay. Then how a log is built by Salesforce. So first thing, what you will have is on the line 1, what is very useful. Salesforce will always tell you what was the content of the trace flag regarding the debug level. So here you can find if you add the information you was expecting. So for example, if I know that I need to have the Apex profiling set to finest, I can check that the log is containing this information. If the Apex profiling was set to none, I know that I won't be able to read the log maybe the way I want it to be read. Okay, so this is important for developer. For you, it may be not important, but just keep in mind, if you want to know how the log was built, you can always go back to the line. Okay, and when you have a log that is talking about Apex, what you will have is something like this. And what you can see is that the method entry has a method exit. And the good news is a method entry will always tell when it's starting and when it's ending. And if some other method are called inside, Salesforce will keep the logic of what's happening. So here you can see that inside this method, another method has been called. And inside this method, what I can see is that a system debug was called. Okay, so Salesforce will keep the structure of what's happening inside a kind of tree view that you can use, and that some tools are able to read properly, and that will help you understand what is happening inside your code. Okay. The second number is really important because what Salesforce is telling you here is that this line was started at line 4 from the previous caller. Okay, so here I was called by the Apex log to handler. It means that this line was called on line 4 of this class. Okay, and so on. You can really find out where the line or where the execution is coming just by reading this number and finding who was the last method entry. It will tell you where you will find the execution point within the code. Okay. If we go for the flow are a bit more tricky. Flow are working the same. As I said, you will have the flow element described by Salesforce, but unlike Apex, when you are working with flow, with trigger flow, when you are starting a trigger flow, like creating a record, what Salesforce will always do, it will say, okay, I'm starting a create element and I'm ending this element right now. But I don't know what happened inside the element. And in my case, for example, my Apex log trigger here should be part of the elements here, normally, okay? It's because I have created a record here that this trigger has been executed. But due to the nature of the flow, you cannot know this when reading a log, which is a nightmare. So just be careful that when you read Apex, a pure Apex log, it's easy to understand what's happening. When you're reading Apex and flow or just a flow log, it will be really harder to understand what is your safe order of execution because the logs are hiding the information. There is no way to retrieve this in a proper manner. Okay. And if you are used to work with ScreenFlow, the first ScreenFlow will have may have a screen log that will be like this one. But if your ScreenFlow has more than one screen, the second ScreenFlow, the third one, and so on, will always have logs that will be like this. And Salesforce will just tell you, here is starting my log. Okay, there is no way to know to which ScreenFlow is belonging the log by default because Salesforce will just give you an unknown ID that is pretty obscure. Okay, but the good news, you can find what is the ScreenFlow that is behind this ID. Okay, if you are finding one day a ScreenFlow log like this one, if you don't know to which flow it's belonging to, you can just execute this query and just put the ID inside the flow interview guide, and Salesforce will be able to tell you, okay, I know this ScreenFlow is belonging to this flow. Okay, so sometimes I need to understand what's happening in ScreenFlow, but not the first part, and I need to know to which flow it's belonging. The way I will find it is by using this query. Okay. Okay.
Do you have to use like is that just a straight SQL query, or do you have to use like the tooling API or anything?
No,
to
this one is a simple,
Okay.
it's a true simple SQL query. No
Okay.
tooling API for this one.
Gotcha.
But it's a good question. But I should add it, simple SQL query, because yeah, I'm so used to work with tooling API that sometimes I'm forgetting to tell it. So now that we have seen, what can I do with all the information that I've got inside the logs? So things you can do, and that we will see today, is how you can use them to analyze and fix issues related to Apex. You can use them to analyze what's happening regarding SQL, and especially when you have SQL 101, it's really the Apex log that will help me to understand where is my issue. You can use them to monitor and to optimize the code performance. So if you have no event monitoring or things like this, the logs can really help you to understand where you have some bad performance. And after, by reading the log, you should be able to understand what could be improved inside the code. Okay. You can also turn them just to monitor the user activities. And of course, all developers will use them because we love system debug. Even if many people will say we should not use them anymore, system debug remains one of the best sources of information for developers, but you have to know how to use them if you really want to use them properly. Okay. So regarding the system debug, Bob Buzzard did a very nice article explaining what is the consumption of time regarding the usage of system debug. So what he did, he has executed 500 times those type of system debug. He was monitoring here what's happening if the trash flag is activated and not activated. So I will not go in detail inside the explanation of what he did. If you're interested, just go on his article. It's very well done. What I just wanted to highlight is, as long as you are using simple system debug like those, even if you use a lot of them, it will not add you a lot of information inside your transaction. Okay. So this one is the heaviest one. It will be like 1 second to do this. So if you're planning to have 500 system debug, consider that you will start to have issue with performance. But when you will activate trash flag, but if the trash flag is not activated, what we can see is that the system debug will have very low impact on the performance of the transaction. So for me, it's not a big deal to have system debug in production that are like those ones, because I know they won't have big impact on production. Those ones are the ones I will try to avoid, not because of the impact on production, but more because they will add a lot of information inside the Apex log if I just activate the trash flag. Okay. Sometimes when I work with system debug, I would like to be able to display like a lot of information. Like, for example, if you try to execute this, you won't be able to have access to all the information because you will exceed the limit of what Salesforce is able to display on one line. The solution, if you really need to see the content of those information, is to go to this. You can use JSON.serial_as_pretty, and if you use this, you will force Salesforce to display the whole information, whatever is the size of the information, you will have all in the information. So just be careful. It's not something to be done in production. It's really something that is forbidden on my project in production, but we are used to it when we are working in sandbox, because sometimes we really want to see something really precise, and the only way to have it is use this. Or you can use a for loop with a system debug inside, but in that case, use this. It's easier to write and you just remove it at the end and that's all. Okay. So this is a very efficient manner if you want to display a lot of information inside Apex log. And the last thing that I'm trying to explain to my team is when you work with system debug, you don't have to use system.debug, just a message. You can add the level of at which level you want the system debug to be displayed. So for example, sometimes we just say, I want the system debug to be displayed only on finance because I know I will never display this except in very specific use case. At the opposite, you can say, I want to debug this message as soon as I put error, which is a way to say if I'm just putting the debug level at error, those messages will appear, but those will not be displayed. Okay, so it's a nice way to really manage when you want to see a system debug. You don't have to use the debug level. You can go on a minor level or a finer level, and you will be able to have access to a part of the system debug or all system debug. Okay, so it's a question of habit to use this, but it's really something that can be useful when you want to be able to leverage which system debug should be displayed when you are working with them. And one of the things I do a lot is monitoring the performance of my application. And as I don't have event monitoring, the Apex log is the way for me to do it. So when I have to do this, what I'm used to do is I'm creating a trash flag with a very low debug level. So normally I just use Apex or workflow. I will just set it to error level. So it's just a way to say whenever a user is doing something, I want him to create an Apex log. I will never read the content of the Apex log. I just want to have a record inside the database. That's what I want to read. Okay. Then I will create a trash flag for all targeted users. So that's what I told you previously. Sometimes I'm targeting like 1,000 users because I want to monitor all my users during 2 or 3 hours. I want to see which one are able to have operations that are lasting more than 15 seconds, which is specialty on my project. And then you let your user work, and then you let the size of your log growing very, very quickly. Then when you estimate that you have enough results, you can start executing this query. And this query will give you the duration. So it's telling you your user has been executing a transaction and the transaction lasts those milliseconds. And if I open the log, I will find the code unit. And from the code unit, I should be able to start to understand where the issue is. And then I will just upgrade the trash flag for the selected user in order to really understand why there is a process that is running very, very long. Okay, but there is a catch. And this little guy has seen the catch. If you go there, sorry, here Salesforce is telling me your transaction lasts 12 hours. What? How can this be possible? And if Salesforce is trying to lie to you, what you have to go is you have to go for the start date and the last modified date, because if you do the difference between those two columns, you can see that in real, the operation lasts 1 second, maybe 2 seconds. So Salesforce sometimes is lying here. So you have to be careful and not consider that it is the real duration is here. If the duration seems a bit weird, always control that the duration was really the one expected by using those columns in order to find it. Okay. And Salesforce is also able to do it on smaller results. So even this one is false because it tells me the log took 5 seconds to be written, but in fact it was only 2 seconds. Okay. So when you are doing monitoring on performance, this is a good starting point, but this is the real information I want to read at the end, just to be sure that Salesforce is not lying. And as I said previously, the last step will be when you have found out some point that seems to be very slow, what you will have to do is create a new trash flag, add the debug level on the trash flag that is corresponding to what you want to see. So normally I will use Apex workflow and database to define level, and I will use the Apex profiling to finer because I want to understand if I have performance issue related to my SQL or DML operation. Okay. Sorry. And the last thing you can use with the Apex log is the request identifier. So this is a field, a standard field of Apex log. And this one is corresponding to the transaction. So it's the ID of your transaction. So for example, in Apex, if you just do request.getCurrent.getRequestID, Salesforce is just giving you the ID of the transaction. So this is really useful for log framework. I use it a lot because on my project, we have a lot of external web service that are calling us. And sometimes they say, hey, we have an issue, but we don't know what's happening. What we do is whenever they are calling us, we always send them back this ID. And when they have issue, we just have to activate the trash flag for the selected user. And the external services, we just say, okay, we have an issue and we know that the issue happened with this transaction ID. And we will find this transaction ID. I forget to add it inside the query. But if you go into Apex log, you will find the transaction ID. So you will backtrack what is the transaction ID. And from the transaction ID, you can directly go to the correct log and find which log you need to read to understand what's happening during the external app call. Okay. So it's really something that, So it's really something that you really need to know, especially when you work with external services, if you plan to work with your own log framework or thing like this. And what is the thing I prefer is working with SQL 101. It's the tricky things that I hated at the beginning, because when I started on Salesforce on my first project, we were hitting this type of error at least 5 or 6 times per month. And I was in charge of finding what's happening and I did not know where to start. But now it's very easy for me to find where the issue is. And here I'll just give you an example. I've got a transaction and my transaction is just telling me you have a 101 exception raised by Salesforce, do something. First thing I will do, I will go inside the developer console and I can see that the developer console is telling me, yes, I can see that you are trying to execute 101 queries. Okay, up to now, everything seems fine. But when I go inside the log, I start counting the log, the real so-called queries that I can see, and I will only see 92 queries. So Salesforce is telling me I've got 101 queries that you try to execute, but inside the log, I can only see 92 queries. So who is right? Is Salesforce trying to lie to me, or do I miss something? If you go deeper, you go at the end of your log, and because you activated the Apex profiling level, it's even weird, because now what the profiling is telling me is that I executed 29 queries due to a namespace, and still I've got 101 queries that has been executed. So in fact, I'm not executing 92 queries, but I was able to execute 129 queries, but I can only see 92 queries within the log. So where is my issue? And it's really something I was struggling a lot until I discovered that when you don't see the query, you have to be careful, because if you have query inside flow, you won't see this information inside the log. At least you cannot see the query that the flow is executing. Okay, so just be careful when you are having this type of issue. If you think that you don't have the right number of queries, just try to figure out if you don't have some flow that are starting queries and that are not warning you inside the log properly. Okay. And now I will show you a free tool that you can use if you have to manage those type of issue. And for this, I selected 5 scenarios. So the first one is when I'm working with system debug, what I want to know is where my system debug is coming from. Okay, because sometimes I have hundreds of system debug inside the log, but I don't know in which class was the system debug. So sometimes I can say, oh, this system debug is very nice, but I don't know where it's coming from, and I have to go through the code and I really hate this. But you will see that some tools are able to do it for you. You don't have anything to do. Okay. Second things we will see is how you can use tools to improve the performance. So how tools can help you leverage where you could do something regarding the performance. We'll see how the tool can help you analyze the so-called consumption, like the one I explained previously. I will quickly show you that reading the tree view can be quite challenging with the tools, but anyway, it's still possible. And the last one, I will show for each of the tool a specific trick that belongs to the tool that the other tools don't have. Okay. And for the challenge, we will have 3 tools. So I will use the developer console. I will use the log analyzer plugin from Salesforce, and I will use Calumet, which is a tool I developed for my client, but it's free, so you can download it if you want. Both tools are working fine, and both tools can really help you understand what's happening inside the log. Okay. And let's start with the developer console. So you are lucky because I had a lot of issue with the developer console those days, but it seems to work almost properly now. So first thing you will want to do with developer console is let's open a small log. So this one. Yeah. So when working with the developer console, first, don't use this view because this view is useless. For me, I think this view is useless. So the good habit is go for debug, click on view log panels, and here you can select the one you want. I strongly suggest you to use the stack tree, the execution log, and the execution overview. And the source is also useful. So just keep those four panels, skip the other ones that are useless. At least I don't know how to use them. I never use them, but those four panels are really useful. Okay. When you have done this, what you can do, you can go to debug and save perspective. And here you can give a name to your perspective. So I can name it Apex log. So I already have one. And then now if I want to go back here, I can say switch perspective, and I will see my Apex log predefined perspective, which is containing only what I want to use. Okay. And this one is useful for many things. So the first thing I want to do here is this one. So first thing I'm interested in is system debug. So when I'm working with system debug, what I told you is I like to know where my system debug is coming from the code. Okay. And developer console is a really nice tool to do it because all you have to do is you go on this panel, you just tick the debug only. Salesforce will just display you all the system debug you have inside the log. And when you want to see where it's coming from system debug, you just select the system debug. And here you will find, oh, it's coming from here. And if you don't know where you are, you can always go up to the bottom. You can see it's in Apex log handler on line 30. Okay. And it's working, whatever is the size of the log, Salesforce will always be able to say, okay, this system debug is here inside your code. Okay, so it's very easy when you see a system debug that you think is interesting, but you don't know where it's coming from, just use this tool. Developer console will easily find where the system debug was wrote inside the code. You don't have to go for a search inside the whole class in order to find it. It will find it for you, okay? If you plan to use it, never use system debug level. If you add a system debug level, Salesforce won't be able to find where the system debug is inside the code. I don't know why. Okay, so really take the habit never to use the system debug level with any level. Keep it at none when working with the developer console, or you may not be able to use this feature that can be really useful when working with system debug. Okay. Second things you can do with system debug is with developer console is using the ability to see what's happening regarding the performance and things like this. So this one is not working, but what you will have is the limit. So Salesforce will tell you when you execute the code, how many queries were executed, how many aggregate queries, things like this. So it's always useful to have an idea of what's happening. And if you go back inside your code, if you type at any moment of the log, it's really hard to use, but Salesforce is even able to say, at this point of the log, I was no query yet executed. So let me, I don't know where is here. I need to find, they're all executed at the same time, I guess. But the idea is, if you have a huge log, Salesforce is really able to say at this moment of the log, you are there was 3 to 1 query consumed. Sometimes it's useful if you want to narrow where I'm consuming a lot of so-called queries at a specific moment. Okay, so this one can be useful for this. But what is really useful with the developer console is the last column, the executed units, because this one will be able to tell you which method is consuming a lot of memory. And it's really something I love. This one is just telling me when you are working on this transaction, this method is using a lot of memory. It doesn't say you at the end of the method, you will keep this in memory. But during the execution of this method, this is the side of the memory that was used by Salesforce. So it's really something I use to understand where I've got EV consumption of memory within my code. The other thing I'm using, but is the ability to see which method is consuming a lot of time. So this is a way to see quickly what is consuming a lot of time. So here you have information regarding the performance of your code. So as this is this is something that also can be useful. Okay. And the special trick of the developer console that no other application has, and it's really something that I really need in production, except in production it's useless, but in production, it's really something that I need at least 3 or 4 times a year. And if I didn't have it, I don't know how I would do. The idea is here, I've got a simple query where I am just, during execution, I'm just asking to Salesforce, tell me the ID of all my Apex log. Okay. Up to now, this is very interesting because if I execute it, I know that with the checkpoint, so with the Apex replay debugger, or if you are used to checkpoint, I will be able to catch what was the content of this query. Okay, so let's do it. So let's imagine I'm just doing a. So I will just, so here you can see I've got a checkpoint. And if I just do this dot method dot on this, and French key. If I do this, and if I go for checkpoint, and it didn't take my checkpoint, I hate Salesforce.
I think because you ran method 1, not method 2.
Yeah, but method 1 will call method 2. But method 1 is using method 2 at a moment. But I cannot see my checkpoint. So that's it. Okay, now it's here. So what you have here, Salesforce, you tell me, okay, you asked me to create a checkpoint here. So if I double click on the checkpoint, here I have access of all the value that are retrieved. So here I will find all the ID of my records. Okay, so I'm pretty happy, but my requirement was I would like to see the name of the Apex log, for example, or status or whatever. But if I'm in production, as I never put the name or the status inside the query, there is no way I can modify this directly in production, except if I just deploy again my class, and it's something I don't want to do. And here is the magic. You can select your checkpoint, click on Edit Properties. Here you have 2 options. So let's go for the first one. And here I say, okay, I forget it, but let's add this. Give me the ID and the name from Apex log 2. And that's it. Okay, so what I'm saying to Salesforce is when you will arrive on line 13, I want you to execute my query because I'm stupid and I forgot to add the name within the query, but I really need to understand what's happening. Okay. And if I do this, and if I execute it again, here I've got a new one. And if I double click and go inside the query result, now I can see this information that I forgot to add during the code I wrote previously. Or maybe I didn't need it for the transaction, but because I'm debugging my code, I need this specific information. And one way to have it is just going here. And if I'm in production, it means I don't have anything to deploy. I can like inject a so-called query in production and Salesforce will do what I'm asking me to do. It doesn't complain. Okay, so it's really a really great feature that the developer console is opening for us. And if it's not enough, so let's say I would like to have this information for 2 objects. Here I can add only 1 query. So there is no way you can add more than 1 query. If you need more than 1, what you could do is you go for Apex code, and here I could say system.debug, and here I will say run this query. And if I want, I could even say I want to do the same for Apex log 1 object. Okay, so here you can really say to Salesforce, I need to execute 2 queries. I know you cannot do it through the so-call, but I know you will be able to do it through this one. And if I do this, if I just execute my code again, and this way, this time I need to go inside my log. So this log, you know, and normally at the end, I should have my system debug inside. So here you will find your system debug that is regarding what you ask Salesforce to execute with Apex. Okay, so it's really a feature that I'm not using every day, but sometime in production, it can really save you some time because you can do whatever you have in mind. But what is poorly explained by Salesforce is when if you try to write Apex here, you have to understand that your code is executed outside of the class. It means that it's like you are creating a static class outside of the class. So this Apex code has no access to the variable of the method or of the class in which it will be injected. It has only access to static variables, and that's all. And the second thing that is not explained by Salesforce is as soon as you will reach the end of your Apex, Salesforce will roll back the transaction, whatever happened. So if you have system debug after this line, they will never appear in the log because Salesforce is doing a rollback just after the execution of this Apex code. It's just a way to say, whatever you have done here, whatever you are doing here, I cannot insert the operation because maybe you are breaking something. Okay, so don't try to use this in order to do Apex injection or things like this. It's only useful if you want to retrieve information that you could not retrieve in another manner in production. Okay, and this is the part I love, but it's really poorly documented by Salesforce. So that was the part regarding developer console. Second tool that you should be aware of, but I just realized that a lot of developers are not using, and I don't know why. It's the Apex Log Analyzer. So Apex Log Analyzer is a plugin that you have normally by default if you are using the Salesforce plugin from Salesforce. And the tricky thing with this plugin is the color. So if you choose to use it, I strongly suggest you to modify the color they put by default. So I will just wait for them to go back, and there is no way to do a pause. But by default, if you use this one, if you use the localizer, they put green colors by default that are useless because it's really, for me, it's impossible to use with the default color. But if you go inside the settings, so if you just take the time to go for profile settings and just type log analyzer, here you can set whatever color you have in mind for each of the different level. And this way, it really becomes something that you can use and that you can read very easily. Okay. And here are some examples that I have done. So here I've got a few logs. So I will kill everything. So here, first one, performance issue. So if I ask the log analyzer to read it, I will have something like this. So here, what you can see is that I'm not using green, but I'm using different colors. So I've got red for so-called DML. I should put it in another color. But the idea is keep different colors so you can really easily read when you have a workflow issue, a method issue, a so-called issue, or DML issue. Okay. If you do this, this screen can be really helpful and easy to read. Okay. So that's what I wanted to highlight on this tool is really change the color. It will be a very powerful tool that you can use on the daily basis. Okay. And the tool is very good for two things. So code tree is really something I never use because if your tree is a bit complex, it's almost impossible to read. So cannot expand. Yeah. So when you have a complex tree, reading this is a nightmare. So I will almost never use this. But what I lose a lot is analysis. So analysis is giving you an idea of what is consuming a lot of time inside the log. And if you want to use it, what you have to focus on is on the self time. So if total time is the time is just saying you have this method, you have run the method 215 times, and in total, it consumes you this time of memory, this time, which is a nice information, but most of the time I will mainly focus on self time. And if you focus on self time, what the tool is telling you is you have here one method executed only once, but this method is taking you 66, almost 2/3 of the time execution is consumed by this method. Clearly, you have to do something regarding this method. This method is not optimized. Okay. At the opposite, what you can see here is that this method that has been run a lot of time is not consuming that much. So you can consider that this method is properly optimized. Okay. So this tool is really useful for this, for finding where you have heavy consumption of Apex code. That's the tool I will use if I have to find this. Okay. And the second tool that is really powerful is the database. Because, so I will switch to something more interesting because this one has nothing. So let's open this one. So here you have a log where there is a lot of the so-called operation, DML operation. And if I ask it to read this, what I really love with the tool is that first, it will be able to tell you, why is that? So here you can see that I've got a lot of time consumed by the DML operation. So for example, here I can see that inserting contact took me around 16 seconds to execute. And if I go in detail, I can see that I've got one operation taking 6 seconds and the other one are quicker. Okay. So like the performance for method, you can really use this tool to find out if you have DML operation taking a lot of time. And you have exactly the same for, let me close this. And you have the same for SQL. So for SQL, the tool will also tell you the number of times the query has been executed. So this one is very nice because here I can see that I have got queries that may be optimized and should not run more than once. So it's aggregating the queries, so which can be very helpful. Is telling you the time for the execution. So sometimes you will find some queries that are taking a lot of time during execution. So it's really a good indication that maybe the query should be optimized. And if you open a query, normally is able to tell you if the query is optimized or not. So here is just telling me your query seems fine. I don't see any optimization to be done. And if I go a bit later, I should have some query that are not optimized normally. Yeah, here is just telling me here you are using a query, but I think your query has not been optimized. Okay, so he will try to tell you if the query are properly done or not, but he will not give you the right way to do it. But now that we have ChatGPT, maybe you could ask ChatGPT how to improve your query. Okay, so clearly this is a nice tool. The huge issue of the tool, but I need to write to the developer is that what they don't do properly is they don't know how to filter by namespace. So the tool is not able to know if the query has been executed by the default namespace or by another namespace. Because if a query is executed by another namespace, it means it doesn't count regarding the limit of 100 and 100 queries. But if it's inside the default namespace, then it's counting. Okay. But anyway, it remains a very good tool that I'm used to work with a lot because I really like it. Okay. And the last tool is my own consumption because I need to work on a lot of subjects with my clients. So here is the tool. So I will just focus on the debugs. The tool is written to work on many subjects, but I will really focus on what it can do regarding logs. So what the tool can do for you, first, he will retrieve all the logs like other tool, but he will tell you where you are regarding the storage on your log on your org. So it's very useful to know when you are close to 1 GB or you are going above 1 GB. You can delete very easily the logs you don't want. So if you just select 1, 2 logs and click on delete, you can delete the logs that you don't want to keep. You can filter the log, and what is important, he knows how to read a log. So what you can ask him to do, here you have a radial menu. And here you can say, hey, I want to understand what's happening regarding the 101 errors, for example. And the tool will do the calculation and he will tell you, hey, you have been executed 2 queries and 1 query has been executed twice. So that's the information he's giving me. Okay, so he's really trying to understand what's happening. And the log I'm looking for is not this one, so should have it here. Yeah, should be here. And if I took this log, which is easier to understand, here it is. So here we have a log, and this one is a real log, and it's an issue in my production because I don't know how to solve it. What the tool is telling me is that I'm executing 36 queries. One query has been executed 33 times. The second number is the number of rows that are returned by each query. So if it's always the same number, it will always keep the same number. If two queries, so twice the same queries, is retrieving different numbers of results, it will tell me one query is retrieving 4 rows, the second one is retrieving 7 rows, for example, which could be an indication that maybe I need to execute those queries more than once. But if all my queries are executing only with the same result, there is a great chance that this query could be optimized by storing the result inside the memory of Salesforce. Okay. And when there is a -1 means that I hit 101 exception, and -1 means that the last execution was failing. Okay. But my big issue with this log is that I've got only 37 queries, only one coming from the flow, and 93 are coming from managed package. And Salesforce is complaining that I've got too many queries executed, but I don't know why. Because I'm only consuming 37 queries for me, and I don't understand why Salesforce is telling me that I'm consuming more than 37 queries. Okay, so even with the best tool, sometimes you will hit on subjects you don't know how to treat. But what I wanted to show is that the tool will be able to find out if you are consuming flow queries, and he will warn you that even if he cannot say which query it is, he has seen that the Apex log is containing some flow queries. Okay. And if I go back here, and I think I have it, which one is it? Could be this one. Not this one. This one. Yeah, this one, what you can see is the tool is able to say there was 5 Apex queries, but there was 8 free flow queries, and it was the one I've shown inside the developer console. It was saying there was 8 queries, but only 5 were seen because of Apex, and 3 were hidden because of the flow. Okay, so that's the kind of information I need to work with when working with so-called queries. And the other thing the tool can do is able to provide you a preview of what's happening. So what the tool is doing is just telling you this is what's happening inside your log. And if I want to remove an information because there is too many display of the same information, I just do a double right click, and the information is removed. So I can easily review what's happening inside the log, and the application is really focused on Apex, trigger, and flow. Okay. So if I go back on here, if I just take this log, because this log is better. So if I take this log, what you can see here is that it's able to analyze the log and tell me you are executing queries, you are executing flow, you are executing trigger. So I can really review what's happening and try to understand where my code is going and see what's happening. And if I just want to see what I call the process, I can shrink the log and say, okay, just tell me when I'm starting trigger operation or thing like this. That's only what is interesting me. And the tool will be able to just provide you this information. Okay. So this is the kind of tool you have. And one of the big advantage of the tool is here. Here I've got my user monitoring. So from here, I'm able to monitor which user is already has a trace flag or not. So green means that I've got a trace flag on the user. If I want to enable a trace flag, I just double click on my user and I will recreate a trace flag for my user. And if I want to mass create some trace flag, I can go here and say, for example, I want to create some trace flag for all people having the deal profile, for example, and I can say just log all my user that has this profile, and I just click create, and it will create all the trust flag for me. So this way I can really monitor a lot of users at once. And when I'm done with what I wanted to see, I just have to take all my users and just remove them, and they are not trust anymore. Okay. So that's it. So that's what I wanted to show regarding the Apex logs. There is a lot to understand, but the Apex log can be frightening, but it's really something that you need to master, because with an Apex log, you can almost solve any issue you have inside a production org. Okay. And just one slide to finish. So here you have, if you want to read the documentation from Salesforce and in the logs, I just put the quick link. If you want to download the application, you just go there. It's totally free. You just have to send me an email through the application, and I will give you the access to the app. And the last thing, if you never use the Apex Replay debugger, I strongly suggest you to go for Trailhead. Go for the Trailhead. It's a 1-hour Trailhead. It's really explaining really well how to use it. It's not something that is mandatory, but it can really be helpful when working with Apex logs or issue. And that's it for the presentation. And 1 hour. Wow.
Yeah, just got it in right under the wire there. So,
Yeah.
thank you, Fabrice. This was really good information. There, I learned a few things. I'll tell you that much. And I've been doing this
Okay.
for quite a bit of time, and I had no clue whatsoever about how the what's it called, the part where you were in the console debugger and or console log and being able to insert Apex and whatnot. That was
checkpoints. Yeah, it's really something that very few people are aware of. This part, and it's really something that can be really helpful in production, because you don't have anything to deploy. You can really push something in production for just a test and see what's happening.
Yeah, that was really cool. So I know we're right at time, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to either ask them, come off of mute, or put them into chat, and we'll hang here for just a couple minutes, see if there's anything.
Anyway, if you have any question, you can always reach me on LinkedIn or Trailblazer community. I will be always happy to help or answer questions if you have any questions.
All right, give it just a little bit longer, just in case somebody's trying to type something out. But while we're waiting to see if anybody has anything, I will let everybody know we are having another event in January. So check the LinkedIn. I'll be promoting that there, as well as on the community group page. And we got a thank you from somebody here who says it was useful. It was a pleasure to hop on.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thank you.
So, yep. Okay. All right. Well,
okay.
With that, we'll go ahead and wrap the meeting. Thank you so much. Appreciate everybody coming, and have a good rest of your day, and hope to see you in the next one. Thank you.
Yeah. See you, Jason. Bye.
Bye-bye.